Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're watching or listening to this. I'm the Shredder, and the opinions I'm about to express, as always, are my own. And I want to talk a little bit about what's going on in the UK with the upcoming general election on the 4th of July, and in particular, the conversation around deselecting a candidate. This is not going to be about the Labour Party and their seeming attempt to purge anybody on the left and bar them from standing to actually be an MP this year. And most notably, in particular, would be Diane Abbott. That's something I want to get onto in a later video, but instead, I want to discuss the news that the Labour MP Jess Phillips has written to the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and asked that he deselects former Prime Minister Liz Truss as candidate. Now, this is quite big. I'm not aware of any other case where a party has called on a sitting Prime Minister to deselect their predecessor. Um, Now, the reason that Jess Phillips has done this, and I'll leave a link to her letter in the description, is because Liz Truss gave an interview to Carl Benjamin, otherwise known on YouTube as Sargon of Akkad. I believe it was for his podcast called The Lotus Eaters. I'm not going to bother listening to it for the simple reason I can't think of any two people I would like to listen to less in conversation than Carl Benjamin and Liz Truss. But again, this was quite significant for the simple reason that if I was to describe Carl Benjamin to anybody, it would be smug, self-important, hardcore misogynist, racist, paedophile apologist piece of shit. And that would be me being extremely nice about him. If I wanted to remind anybody offline of who he was, all I would have to do is simply mention the UKIP rape guy, because that's what he became known as to the wider public in 2019 when he stood to be an MEP. The reason for that is because, as Jess Phillips outlines in her letter, Carl Benjamin had made remarks about whether or not he would rape Jess Phillips. So these were absolutely despicable, and I'm not surprised that Jess Phillips took issue with it. I will say I think she may be hyper-focused on this one issue, although that's not a knock on her, for the simple reason that, look, that is the thing that impacted her directly and the most. Carl Benjamin tagged her on Twitter saying, "I wouldn't even rape you." He then posted things to his YouTube page about how, oh yeah, I might rape Jess Phillips, but nobody's got that much beer. But Carl Benjamin has a longer and much more unsavory history, which I think should be highlighted. And quite frankly, to be honest, it goes beyond calling for Liz Truss to be simply deselected as a candidate. And that I will get into a little later on. With regard to the rape comments, now when Carl Benjamin was grilled about this in 2019, because it was the big dominating talking point when it came to UKIP and that 2019 European parliamentary election, Carl lied, and he said that he did this in response to Jess Phillips laughing at the Tory MP Philip Davies when he was bringing up a point about male suicide. I know the instance he's talking about because it was from a parliamentary select committee in March 2018, and the clip is widely taken out of context to suggest that Philip Davies got laughed at by Jess Phillips for talking about male suicide rates. Everybody cuts off the fact that Jess Phillips actually said she's fine with talking about male suicide rates. It was the fact that he was proposing an International Men's Day debate that she was laughing at, because the majority of MPs in Parliament are men. They set the agenda. So, the reason Carl Benjamin was lying about this is because he didn't post those in 2018. He posted the rape remarks in 2016, 2 years earlier, and it was in response to a blog that Jess Phillips had written for the Huffington Post. Specifically in the blog, which I've got here in front of me, Jess Phillips was talking about online freedom of speech, and she was saying it should require harassment of women to be unacceptable, and in particular, rape threats. Carl Benjamin has been unapologetic with regard to those remarks, not just in 2016, 2017 when he doubled down at the Milwaukee MythCon, but all throughout 2019 when he was campaigning for UKIP, and even beyond that, he's been unapologetic about those remarks. But again, there was an MP saying that she wants harassment of women to be unacceptable, and in particular rape threats. Carl Benjamin decides he's going to be some fucking wannabe edgelord from 4chan and post a rape joke in response. But again, if I were Jess Phillips, I wouldn't have just stopped with the rape remarks when it came to the letter to Rishi Sunak. There's far worse that needs to be discussed. So, a brief history of Carl Benjamin and why, again, this should go beyond deselection. So, Carl Benjamin, although he calls himself a classic liberal, he has been endorsed by various neo-Nazi, far-right and white nationalist groups and individuals. He's been endorsed by the English Defence League, he's been endorsed by Breitbart, he's been endorsed by neo-Nazi blogs such as More Right, and he's been endorsed by Richard Spencer. Richard Spencer has also said that Sargon was a great way to get people into white nationalism. This is what he said about him on Twitter. He said, I've said over and over that Milo, Yiannopoulos, Sargon, Loudon Southern, and Gavin Williamson types are great entry points into white nationalism. He's also very fond of spreading alt-right and neo-Nazi talking points and conspiracy theories, despite the fact he objects to being called a neo-Nazi or alt-right or a white nationalist himself. In 2017, during the Charlottesville white nationalist demonstration, a counter-protester called Heather Hare was murdered when a neo-Nazi scumbag ploughed his car into a group of protesters. And Heather Hare, unfortunately, died at the scene. Sargon of Akkad decided to spread a lie that he got from white nationalist forums, claiming that Heather Hare didn't die from being hit by a car. She apparently died of a heart attack due to being morbidly obese. Here's what he said of it at the time. It's more that the alt-right are being blamed for someone having a heart attack. Someone in tremendously bad physical condition has a heart attack and suddenly the alt-right has murdered someone. This is something I'm surprised the alt-right doesn't make a big deal out of, to be honest. Now, Heather Hare's murderer was eventually convicted, and when Carl Benjamin was called out on this during a debate, and it was brought up that he was spreading this white nationalist talking point, he retracted it, but he then did a kind of sort of not really retract it by then saying, well, there were lies on both sides. Again, this was a white nationalist demonstration he was talking about. Carl Benjamin's not very fond of groups like Black Lives Matter. In fact, he encouraged the booing of football players when they took the knee. And he also he's not very fond of immigration into the UK when it comes to Asians and particularly people from Arabic and largely Muslim countries. Because he believes that Muslims are an invading force, and he also ascribes to the Great Replacement theory, which is very, very popular with his good friend Paul Joseph Watson. That's the same Paul Joseph Watson, by the way, who said that he would love to be able to press a button and wipe Jews from the face of the earth. Carl Benjamin is very, very fond of using the N-word. He's also defended, by the way, a guy who frequently threw out words like Paki Muslim at Asian people. And it said, oh, this guy wasn't a Muslim. And Carl Benjamin himself has repeatedly thrown out things like the N-word. He thinks that that's perfectly acceptable because Chris Rock had the famous routine that he did in his 1996 special, Bring the Pain, about the difference between black people and N-words. And he thinks that's somehow acceptable to the point where he doesn't realize that Chris Rock stopped using that routine for the simple reason that people like Carl Benjamin were using it as an excuse to throw out the N-word freely against black people. He enjoys throwing out other racial slurs too, including there's one where he throws out multiple racial slurs. He throws out a slur against Jewish people, and he repeatedly refers to a girl with Down syndrome as a retard in response to a video that she posted where she talked about how much it hurt her when people referred to her as that. So, again, this is the kind of person that Liz Truss gave an interview to. We've also got the fact that he thinks the private sector can do no wrong. He's all in favour of the private sector being allowed to discriminate against gay people, black people, trans people, and letting the free market decide whether or not those businesses get to stay alive or not. That was at least until he got hit with the free market decide and a private business deciding they didn't want his business anymore. Twitter, pre-Elon Musk, banned him for hate speech, and Patreon also kicked him off for hate speech too. And when they kicked him off, they put up a justification for why, which was simply a transcript from one of his live streams where he repeatedly called people the N-word, and he said that white people should be more civilized in their discourse. So again, this is the kind of person Liz Truss gave an interview to. But again, these private businesses weren't allowed to refuse to have his custom because, I don't know, freeze peach or some other Sargon logic. Here we go, 2014. Elliot Rodger, when he killed all those people, he killed 6 people and he wounded, I think it was at least 10 more in the Isla Vista killings. Elliot Rodger left behind an insane manifesto. He was, a lunatic incel. In his manifesto, he talked about his absolute hatred for women, the fact that he thought women should be subservient to him, and his hatred of mixed race couples, despite the fact I'm pretty sure Elliot Rodger himself was mixed race. It contained a whole load of other warped and twisted views. But despite that, Sargon of Akkad decided he knew what and who was really responsible for this incel killing all these people because of his hatred of women. It was feminism, and in particular, a YouTuber called Lacey Green. Here's what Sargon had to say at the time of that. Before your stupid social justice feminine bullshit, mass murders didn't happen on this scale. It's crazy. This is a disease of the modern age. You are responsible for perpetuating it by disenfranchising these poor fucking guys who don't have any options left. When someone takes the option of absolute insanely last resort, you have to wonder what kind of system is producing them. And I'll tell you what, Lacey, addressing YouTuber Lacey Green, it's a fucking feminist system that is doing this. The words of Carl Benjamin. He also defended Harvey Weinstein as a victim of the Me Too movement, saying of Weinstein, I think there were gold-digging whores who would accept fucking Harvey Weinstein for cash, and then we're hearing from the few that either didn't or did and regret it. That would be the same Harvey Weinstein that in 2022 was convicted of rape and is currently serving a 16-year prison sentence. What else have we got here? Here's a good one. During a debate on age of consent, in response to someone who had said they had been sexually active since the age of 11. I can't remember who the YouTuber was that he was debating. I don't particularly care. But this other YouTuber said they had been sexually active from the age of 11 and asked if anyone could convince them that it was in any way harmful to them because they didn't feel it was. Sargon's response to this was, yeah, it really depends on the child, because some kids mature faster than others. Again, this is why I call him an apologist for pedophilia. And this also might go some ways to explain why Carl Benjamin has been endorsed by the sick weirdo Paul Elam of A Voice for Men. Sargon's a big fan of conspiracy theories and the conspiracy theorist Alex Jones. That's the same Alex Jones, by the way, who claimed that the kids at Sandy Hook weren't actually dead and got sued for over $1 billion over it. Sargon declared on the Joe Rogan podcast when he appeared on that Alex Jones was right about the gay frogs. He cited a study which he actually hadn't read past the first paragraph of. He also has said that the chemical attacks in Syria were either staged or didn't happen, and Adolf Hitler fled to Argentina at the end of World War II. Again, this is who Liz Truss is associating herself with. Meanwhile, when he was campaigning for election to UKIP, him and a bunch of other YouTube edgelords who joined the party were using a slogan from the movie Starship Troopers of service guarantees citizenship. I mean, it was so embarrassing that they even got the likes of Neil Hamilton to say it. And it's funny in a lot of ways because it's like these idiots didn't actually realize that Paul Verhoeven was satirizing fascists like them. I mean, for God's sakes, he had literally had an intelligence officer wearing a Gestapo uniform. And yet, this is what Carl Benjamin was quoting in his campaign to get elected on behalf of UKIP. So again, if I were Jess Phillips, this is probably, I wouldn't. Again, I don't think I would have stopped when it came to the rape allegations. I think she probably should have gone further. She maybe isn't aware of the rest of Carl Benjamin's history. Probably hasn't looked into it. She just knows the disgusting comments that were thrown her way. And at the same time, I think this is a case of I wouldn't just be asking for Liz Truss to be deselected as a candidate. I think she should have gone further and actually recommended that Liz Truss be suspended from the party altogether, possibly even expelled. Because the Conservative Party, believe it or not, does actually have a code of conduct. The fact that she sat down with an extremist lunatic like Carl Benjamin for an interview would typically, under normal circumstances, be a breach of several of the clauses in the code of conduct. But the main one, the main one in particular that comes to mind for me is Section 7 of the Nolan Principles, that every elected Conservative official, from local councillor all the way up to MP, has to agree to. And it's Section 7, which is leadership, and it states that all elected officials must act with honesty and probity and in a manner which upholds the reputation and values of the Conservative Party. I would love for somebody in the media to ask Rishi Sunak, James Cleverly, Oliver Dowden, Grant Shapps, Suella Braverman, anybody who's currently doing the media rounds right now for the Conservative Party in the run-up to this election, to ask them, does Carl Benjamin represent the views and morals of the Conservative Party? I would love to hear an answer on that. I'm the Shredder, that's my opinion, and fuck the Tories.